Good afternoon, and welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. Well, Rabbi Freeman, I just wanted to say one thing up front. Today that I'm wearing the reason I am wearing a crimson shirt with an elephant on it for the first time has nothing to do with today is the national championship game where Alabama Crimson Tide is playing in the football national championship. I just wonder, this is just a coincidence. It's the only thing I had to posit.
I thought that you are doing it today because since we're talking about miracles, you're hoping for a miracle that Alabama will win.
Well, good. That's just a miracle in itself. Yeah. I'll take that segue.
Yeah.
A good segue about miracles. And I think it's a good point. We are talking about miracles today because we started the book of Exodus here.
That's right.
Exodus. We started
miracle time.
Good time, miracle. So I'm thinking, the story of Exodus is an amazing one, but is it a little bit overkill? I'm going to say it like this. We've got more miracles than you can imagine. It's just chock full of miracles.
Right.
I mean, it's not just... My thought was this. Couldn't God have made Moses this great general? And he could have come out there and he got his troops and he would have harassed with guerrilla tactics, harassed the Egyptians, and Pharaoh finally would have said, enough is enough, let's let these people go.
Right.
We still would have celebrated with a dinner every year.
Right.
It would have been good. Wasn't that enough?
It worked for the Vietnamese.
Right, it did. It's a good thing eventually enough. Afghans and the Russians.
Yeah, right. So a lot of people have been doing it for centuries.
I don't get it. I mean, let's think about the miracles we got. You start out with the boy, Moses being put in a basket and he survives, and the princess coincidentally finds him and he becomes the prince of Egypt. And next thing you know, he sees a burning bush that is not consumed. He talks to God. Then we've got blood. We've got boils and locusts, and we got frogs and
10 plagues.
10 plagues. We got them all, and slaying the firstborn, all this kind of things. I mean, is it? And then of course it ends with the ultimate miracle: the Red Sea or the sea splits and they go across it.
Right.
It sounds to me like a bit of overkill. I know God doesn't live in the time that we did. It's almost like he's saying, Cecil B. DeMille, I'm making something for you here, which is going to be the biggest movie ever. Because this is a made-for-TV movie. Honestly, this story was not made for a little book. This is made for TV. And, I think, truthfully, Cecil B. DeMille went to the studio head. If we didn't have the Torah, he'd say, okay, listen, Cecil, a little bit overkill. Save some of these for the sequel. You don't need to have all these miracles in the first movie. We want to make some money down the road.
Right.
It's a little bit too much for me. Was it necessary for the world and for the Jews to accept the Torah and to move on and become the Jewish people?
Yeah, I mean, as it is, it's like Alice in Wonderland type of stuff. I mean, like,
it never ends. You got one after the other, and it just doesn't end.
And even once they get out, he keeps going, because when they go into the desert, they're eating manna.
Right.
And they drink water from a rock that he hits. I mean, like, what's going on over there,
I would say overkill, but you know what? I'm not a producer and I'm not God.
So that is really the question. Why all the miracles? We could have accomplished everything that was intended to be accomplished, still have the Jewish people, they still could be faithful to God, strong warriors, they carried on their guerrilla war for years and years and years, always believing in God, never losing faith, and ultimately they toppled the Egyptians and, all that stuff, right?
With Hanukkah.
Yeah, right. It's a great story anyway. Could have written it up, it would have been good. What's with miracles? Okay, and actually, there's a second question, which is, you asked it, how many do you need? I mean, even if you, for some reason, even if we can explain, which God willing we will, why you need a miracle, but once you've done a miracle, I mean, how many do you need to keep doing more and more and more and more?
Right.
After 10 miracles, let's say they had all gotten free, you needed the 10 miracles for some reason, 10 plagues. And then they got to the sea. I mean, couldn't they have taken boats? Or as a matter of fact, if you read actually in next week's Torah portion, it said God specifically took him to the sea. He could have taken him on the northern route, avoided coming out of Egypt. They could have gone northeast, along the coast, right up into Gaza, right? Top the Sinai Peninsula, right up into Gaza. Instead, he took them southwest, so they had to get across those big lakes, or maybe all the way down south, they had to get across the Red Sea. Why?
It's definitely a conundrum, so to speak.
Okay, so let's understand miracles. What are the value of miracles in general? Okay, so miracles are designed to accomplish three things. And this goes way back to, miracles are very important to us. You know, when you get up on Friday night, you're going to take a glass of wine in your hand. I'm left-handed. Hold it in my left hand, and I'll say, because the Sabbath is the beginning of the first of all of our holy days, it reminds us of the exodus from Egypt. You would think you should say the Sabbath reminds us of creation.
Right, yeah.
I mean, 6 days you work, 7 days you rest,
right.
Creation. But instead we said it reminds us of Egypt. So why? What is all this Egypt about? The miracles teach us three fundamental things. And they were done in front of everyone's eyes.
Everybody saw them. Yep.
The Jews saw them, the non-Jews saw them. I'm sure they carried it in the papyri of the day, you know.
Probably made the news.
Right,
Yes.
certainly made the news, okay. That, number one, when God does a miracle, it shows, A, that he was the creator. How do miracles show that he was the creator? Because had he not created, from where would he have found the ability to change nature?
How could he change it if he didn't make it?
Right. I mean, no one else has been able to turn blood into water. And even if someone could turn water into blood, even if they could turn water into something else, but how do you do it to all of the water? Or how do you make hail come down, with fireballs inside of it, which is no one's been able to figure that one out, right? And on and on and on and on. How do you get all of a sudden all of those billions of frogs to come out of the river? Unless you created them, if you are just a part of a system, there's no way you can master it like that.
Right, no doubt.
Number one, he created it. So it wasn't always there. Must be that he created it, otherwise he wouldn't be so masterful over it. Secondly, nothing stops him. He has the power, unlimited power, and he can do anything. And that is what we see from the whole scope of all of these different miracles, 10 plagues. Why not just do one plague?
I mean, it's still a good question. I mean, I don't know. Why?
So if you look at the plagues, we see 3 of them were from below the surface.
Right.
3 of them are on the surface. 3 of them come down from the sky. And 1 of them comes from who knows where. Right. The last one, the plague of the firstborn. I mean, wherever that comes from. So that shows God is unlimited power. You don't tell me that maybe he created the forces beneath the earth but didn't create the forces on the earth, or created those 2 but didn't create the ones in the sky. No. He's all over the place.
It's pretty much just gets rid of all the skeptics. Okay, he did this, but he doesn't do this. His miracles get rid of all the skeptics.
No limitations.
No limitations.
Not only is he a creator, he's a creator without limitations. He's a total creator. Not only did he created everything, and he has no limitations. And number three is a really interesting one. Not only did he create it all, and not only is he unlimited, but he is actively involved with it as it progresses.
Well, that's important. Right, I got you.
Because, as many people will say, okay, let's say God created the world, but does he really care? Does he really care if Alabama or Clemson wins tonight? I mean, please. And the answer is, yeah, he actually cares about every single thing.
Thank you very much.
I don't know, why he cares.
It's important to some of us.
And I don't know which one he cares about to win or to lose.
I have an idea, but I won't share it right now. But go ahead.
Okay, right. So either way, though, he cares. He is actively involved in the goings-on, so that when the Jewish people arrive at the sea and they got nowhere to go, he splits it, on cue.
Right.
He doesn't, show up a few minutes too late, too bad. If I only come a half hour earlier, I could have split the sea and got him across, but now they all got slaughtered. No.
Right.
He's there, he knows what's going on, and he shows up when needed, on time, and on cue. He is involved with what's going on. So those are the big 3. The creator, limitless, no limitations, and actively involved.
Right.
That is why we needed to have miracles in general. That's why they had to get out of Egypt, because God had to introduce himself to mankind, and he wants to introduce himself specifically to mankind through the Jewish people.
Right.
Because the Jewish people are going to be his models, to show off the God's attributes. He chooses to use the Jewish people as his models for exhibiting his limitlessness, his involvement, and his creation. Okay, but that's really only good up to level 1.
Okay.
It only gets us part of the way there.
All right. Where do we go now?
Because the problem with that is, really, after the 10 plagues, he pretty much had it done. You know, the splitting of the sea, you know, like, he specifically, as I mentioned before, specifically took him to the sea so he could split it. It sounds like he's kind of getting, like, carried away, like, wants to, like, it's all showing off almost. Like,
I mean, you know, he hardens Pharaoh's heart over and over again so he can do more.
Right.
It's like, you know, he definitely wants to do more.
So he's got to make a point, and I get it. At a certain point, though, it's done. We all got it. We all know that God is all-powerful. And especially as they move into the desert, why couldn't they have made some arrangements to come up with food on their own or water on their own?
Right.
You know, I mean, they could have worked it out. You know, like other people have gone through tough times and they managed. And first of all, he could have taken them on a different route. He didn't have to take them into the most like miserable wilderness area and then sustain them. He could have sent them along the route where they have more access to food.
Sheep and things like that.
Yeah. So why does he do that? So here we've got there are 2 levels of miracle. There is the miracle which comes when it is needed at a specialty time or place. You got the people are in the desert, people are in Egypt. They need to get out. God says, okay, I'll show you that these are miracle people, and I'm going to get them out, like miraculously break them out of there to make a point.
And he made that point.
He made that point. Now, the people need to be sustained. This is for the long haul. Look at the next phase of miracles they went into. They were drinking water that came from a stone, and they were eating manna that fell from heaven.
It's pretty big.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
It also happened day in and day out for 40 days constantly. 40 years. 40 years constantly. Right? It's not like, you know, like frogs. That lasted for a week and then it was gone. Or splitting the sea. I mean, it lasted for some hours. By the next morning, they crashed back down. This is having people live on a regular basis from a miracle. So this is stage 2 miracle understanding.
Right.
Miracle understanding number 1 is God's always there. He can always step in as necessary and disrupt nature or put nature aside. But that means there is a natural system that functions. And then I can put it aside. However, if I want to intervene at any point, I can supersede that. So you got the rules, but I can supersede those rules at any point as necessary. That's one thing. But now they're going to be living according to miracles on a daily basis, which means he's putting aside nature entirely.
Or doesn't that become nature?
Yeah, they're not going to be in nature.
Or it's now natural for them to have manna coming down from that. I mean, he kind of changed nature altogether.
Well, or he created a different nature,
right.
Which is a nature which we wouldn't call it nature, right? Which is dealing directly with God. Like, for example, and this gets us into a lot of our rabbinic commentary, but the rabbis said that depending on how good you were, that's how close your manna fell to your house.
That's interesting.
So if you were a really, really good guy, fell right there in the front door. You open the door, you reach out to get the paper. You probably didn't even, just put it on your robe, reach out.
Get your manna,
you're fine. Get your manna and you got it. And if you're like the bad guy, you maybe have to go trek out into the field and go get it.
Not as good.
Yeah, that's not as good. So it was, what it meant was constant interaction. You're being fed, spoon-fed, straight by God, which means that not only does God say, will I step in at a given time, at any time I can just suspend this, blow the whistle, and step in with a miracle.
Right.
But God says, and I do that for this particular group of people, which I don't usually do. But on top of that, don't think that this group of people generally lives according to nature, but at times I suspend it. No. This particular group of people, they don't live according to nature at all.
Wow.
Period. They don't live according to nature at all. And the way they live, anyone at a glance, at least during 40 years in the desert, can see like, whoa, these people do not live the way the rest of us are living. Very strange. As a matter of fact, they're going to go into Israel, and many people talk about this. A lot of elders in Israel didn't really want to go into Israel.
Right, no.
Because they thought it's like a step down.
Yeah, they were doing pretty well.
Right. Now, the thing is about Israel and going into the country and farming and doing all that stuff is it looks like they're going back to nature. But God has taught them a lesson during their 40 years in the desert. No, they don't live according to nature. It looks like nature.
Right.
It seems as though they are farming and all that, but they are really like, it really looks as though Clark Kent earns his living by being a newspaper reporter.
But then he takes his glasses off.
But, it's just a sham. He really does not make a living by being a newspaper reporter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Clark Kent is Superman. Right? He's just looking like Clark Kent. And that's what happened. When they were in the desert, they're Superman.
Right, you got everything. Clothes don't wear out, everything's good.
So people say, but why would we want to go into Israel and have to dress up like Clark Kent? When you're Superman, just be Superman.
Right.
Going to Israel, now, there really are still Superman, but they have to look like Clark Kent. And that is the tricky part because, and after a while, actually, wouldn't it really be a pity if Clark Kent actually came to think of himself as a newspaper reporter?
Right.
And when he was standing in front of a building and something was on the other side, he said, "Well, I'm only a newspaper reporter. I can't leap tall buildings in a single bound." Yeah, right. Right. And I can't use my X-ray. He starts wow, what a pity. He got so good at acting like a newspaper reporter that he actually lost the power. That's what people were afraid of was going to happen. And to tell you the truth, maybe that did happen.
Maybe it did.
But the bottom line is, as far as our discussion goes, and when we're talking about miracles, there's miracle stage 1, which teaches those main 3 points about God: creator, all-powerful, and involved. And who's he involved with? The Jewish people.
Right.
Stage 2, not only am I involved so that I can do special things for them at special times, they live according to my special rules all of the time. And that's why he takes them, spends 40 years in the desert and has them eating miracle food and drinking miracle water and living in a miracle existence, sheltered from all of the climate and all of the potential adversaries and enemies and harsh conditions that are in the wilderness. That is so that he can tell you these people don't live. These people, those miracles, as that was just a one-off, one time in it. This is the way they live on a daily basis.
Yeah, the problem is that, and I'm sure you think what a lot of Jewish people would say, well, what have you done for me lately? Where you been? Yeah, I'm out here working and struggling in the fields now. Now I'm getting burnt by the sun and things aren't as good as they used to be. What's wrong?
Right.
Where's the next card trick?
Right. So last night I went to the home of a son of a Holocaust survivor.
Okay.
He's sitting Shiva, the Holocaust survivor. His father passed away. Okay? And the Holocaust survivor, some years ago, not too long ago, wrote a book about his experiences. And he actually survived the war in Berlin. Berlin.
Wow.
Whole time.
That's a toughie right
Underground, hiding,
wow.
and you can imagine this whole book. I mean, that was in itself a book, and then it was from before the war and after the war and all. There was just a lot going on. I think the figures were, before the war, there were 165,000 Jews in Berlin.
Right.
And by the end of the war, there were 5,000 of them had survived the war. And of the 5,000, I forget what number was, maybe 3,000 of them had actually survived in Berlin.
That's amazing.
In Berlin, hiding and all that. Right. I met another one here some years ago. I met a lady here in Atlanta that also had survived in hiding in Berlin. But you know how they pass themselves off as not being Jewish and all that type of stuff. But right there in Berlin, not Jewish. So he survived the war. Fascinating story. Well, read the book. Miracle, miracle, miracle,
True.
miracle,
True.
miracle. And, beginning to end, it's miracles.
But the 160,000 that didn't survive, their book's not as filled with miracles there.
That's right. That's right. Although you can ask yourself a question, and that is, even that, the way they perished, is so unusual.
I agree with you.
It's so unusual. Is there anything comparable to that in the annals of history? Even the way the 160,000 died was bizarre.
No, I mean, I agree. I've thought of that as well.
I mean, there's always like, the one tribe doesn't like the other tribe, or, whatever it is. They don't like the Armenians, or they don't like, and they wipe them all up. But, these people weren't like that at all, and they were so integrated, prominent, wealthy, and all this type of stuff.
Right. No, I'm with you.
How does that happen? Very, very bizarre. So the people live, it's not that they live, bottom line is that it's not all about miracles for their survival. It's that the people don't live according to a natural, what we would call natural set of rules. They live according to a different set of interaction, dealing directly with God. And God decides that they will live and who will die. And the ones that die in an unnatural way. And the ones that live in an unnatural way. That is how they function. They live and they die unnaturally because they're not part of a system. They are part of a special interactive group that deals directly with God.
So even today, the Jewish people are living a little bit differently.
They absolutely are living a little bit differently. And of course, the responsibility of the Jewish people is to realize and appreciate that they do live differently, that the rules are different for them. And I think, to tell you the truth, down deep, I think a lot of Jews do realize that. As much as they all wish I wish I could just live according to the regular old rules.
And you get a lot of that.
But they kind of realize that, it just doesn't play out the same for Jews.
It doesn't. But we do need to realize there's not going to be another splitting in the sea. There's not going to be another plagues. The biggies aren't coming every day. It's just the daily life.
Right. But that's why the story of the birth of the Jewish people, which is, the exodus from Egypt, which we're reading about right now in these Torah portions. That's why we're talking about it. The birth has to happen through miraculous means because really it introduces us to God. Because we really didn't know God too well, in the story. We did know him in the book of Genesis, and he's been shepherding the forefathers through here and there. Not too many overt miracles for the forefathers, but they certainly did okay, and he kept on looking out for them. But then God comes out with a big splash here in the beginning of Exodus, and we really get to know who he is. And then we really get to know who the Jewish people are by his continued treatment of them as it goes throughout all the years in the desert.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
So really, this is why he took them on the route that took them into the desert, into the wilderness, so that he could show you who they are, and he wanted to show you, of course, who he is also. And this is really why they didn't leave in the first place under unusual circumstances. Why wasn't there a regular old guerrilla war? When you talk about India, India liberated itself from Britain.
Right.
Now, the fact that the British had just fought a war, 2 wars were actually in the previous 50 years that had completely depleted them and wiped them out. That certainly made, Gandhi and his peaceful resistance and all that were certainly helped out by the fact that England was already on its knees from having fought and defeated the British.
Right.
So, but those are all like natural circumstances you can write up in a book. But, the way the Jews did it, Strange.
It's a little bit more complicated. There's no doubt about that. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
That's like good. It's where the big miracles kind of started, but then there's the daily miracles that separate us from the rest of the world.
Right. To show that this is, even on a daily basis, and even when they move into Israel or live wherever they live, they continue to live according to a miraculous approach as opposed to a natural approach. What we would call nature anyway.
Interesting. Very interesting. What I get out of this is somehow what you're explaining is that Alabama is going to win tonight in a miraculous, beautiful way, and then that's what I get out of this. That's what I heard.
I don't know. All I know is that, in my mind, the word Alabama and Obama are very close to each other. I'm wondering about that. When they think, Bama, I see a lot of this Bama stuff in Bama, Obama, Alabama,
It's like no Bama, but Alabama. It's good. I've got it all figured out. But again, the blood, the crimson tide that comes in, it's like blood in the water. I've already figured it out. This is a sign that this is happening during Exodus that Alabama's going to win. But those are the daily miracles, and I believe in miracles, so I'm going that way.
Okay.
Good stuff, though. I mean, this is good. Miracles. That's the Jewish people. We live our lives in miracles. You got to open your eyes, realize it every day.
That's right.
Every day. All right.
That's right. Look at the miracles.
Well, next week, and roll tide.
Yeah.